Welcome everyone, and welcome back to Experiencer Interviews. And today we've got two special friends of mine. I've met them in one in 2015 and one in 2016. Their names are Matt Moniz and Debbie Starborn Hewins. Matt Moniz, he's been a scientist for the last 30 years in analytical chemistry, working in labs in the Boston and Cambridge area. He's worked on analyzing samples from many cases. He's a co-host and science advisor for the radio show Spooky South Coast for the last 14 years. He's one of the oddballs from the live TV show 30 Odd Minutes. He has been featured in many TV shows about UFOs, ghosts, and other unexplained, such as Inside Edition, Ghost Adventures, and many others. He's helped with and featured in dozens of books dealings with the unexplained, with authors such as Budd Hopkins, Peter Robbins, Tim Weisberg, Jeff Belanger, and many others. Matthew has been for the past 2 decades working as a sound engineer and doing audio video for many conferences. He's an original associate founding member of Starborn Support. Deborah Starborn Hewins is a lifetime experiencer. She is the co-founder of Starborn Support, which is a support group for experiencers. Starborn Support was founded in 2006 after Debbie's twin sister Audrey, the founder, had an experience where ETs told her she was going to start a support group for experiencers and was to be called Starborn Support. The next day, Audrey told Debbie about her experience, and then Starborn Support was born. Debbie has an associate's degree in medical assisting. She is a 3rd degree Reiki master teacher, practitioner, therapist, crystal energy healer, psychic medium channeler. She's also an exotic cat breeder, ambassador for ETs, and mother of 3 children. Debbie is a hybrid with many psychic gifts, which were activated during a time of major spiritual awakening, which began when she started having full-blown telepathic contact when a Pleiadian being named Sephiroth introduced himself via automatic writing on December 10th, 2008 at 11:11 p.m. Since then, Debbie has been awakened, enlightened, and activated, and is now an extremely gifted channeler, medium, empath, who is able to see, hear, feel, and become a direct channeler for spirits, ETs, and other non-human entities. Debbie and her twin sister Audrey have been featured on many television shows such as National Geographic, The Secret History of UFOs, NBC's 2020 special, Monsters and Mysteries, Inside Edition, the Australian Today Show, and even filmed for a TV Japanese show. Debbie and her Starborn family are currently working on a Starborn Support reality show. Phew, that was long. So
short version.
Yeah, thank God. So thanks everyone. Thanks for coming on. Haven't seen you guys in a while, so I'm really appreciating this moment to connect again. So so let's say to start a bit on your experiences. I'd rather do this, the most logical ways to start from the beginning. So I imagine you two were childhood experiencers, if I believe.
Correct.
Debbie?
Time, yep.
Okay, so Debbie, let's start with you. At what age did the experiences start?
From the moment I started having memories, I can remember having experiences. So it's been a lifetime.
So can you explain to us what actually happened?
What I remember from childhood would be I would have this uneasy feeling during the day, and it's like I would know that they were going to come and visit. It would start with the uneasiness. I would beg my parents not to put me to sleep because the bald men were going to come and get me, and they summed it up to a child's memory, a child's imaginations, and not real experiences. So I would be shuffled off to bed, and I would sit there terrified, knowing, just waiting, trying to stay awake, waiting for these bald men, as I called them, when I was little and naive and not knowing. Excuse me, I've got to try to set this up better. Okay. Yeah, I was young and naive. I didn't know what they were, but they were bald, so they were bald men to me. I would try to stay awake, and I would try to keep my sister awake with me, my twin sister. We had bunk beds, and I'd be on the bottom bunk, pounding on the top bunk, trying to get her to stay awake, but that never happened. She would end up going to sleep, in parentheses, and then I would be sitting there, and the first thing I would notice would be a light, and then I would I hear my parents. I get scared. Light, blue light would come shining through the windows, under the door, the bedroom doors, and everything. And when I started getting scared, I would hear what sounded like my parents' voices talking to me, saying that it was them and they were coming in and it would be okay. So when the door opened, that obviously wasn't them. But at this point, I could not scream, I could not move, because this rushing energy vibration would take hold and paralyze me. So the only thing I could move would be my eyes. And it feels like there would be a sound, sounding like kind of like a swarm of bees getting louder and softer, louder and softer. And the paralysis would feel like your whole entire body is vibrating. And they would come in. There was two of them that used to come, at first there was only two that I remember. They would come in. There was a taller gray and a shorter gray, both with black cloaks on. Pretty much you can't see anything. They would do their best to try to hold, to hide their faces, so it would, as to not scare me, or as I don't know why they would do that. But I know that I saw enough of them to know that they were not, the regular, typical, average human. And they were bald, and they had these big eyes, and they were very scary when I'm 4 or 5 years old, whatever. Then they would continue to move me if they wanted to move me out the room. It's like you'd be sitting up. I would be sitting up in bed, and then my body would be paralyzed and vibrating. And it's actually, I'm not able to control my own body movements. So they would straighten me out, make me lie down, where then they would continue to elevate me off my bed and just shuffle me out a window. Usually, when I lived in Ohio, it was the same window. They would take me out. The window would be closed, but it seemed like it was always the same direction in the window. But since then, I've recalled going through walls, ceilings. It doesn't matter what's there; they're going to get you through. It continued like that, and I continued to beg my parents to, not put me to bed. And my parents didn't believe me until years later, when my mom was walking into a store of some kind, and there on the shelf was Whitley Strieber's book, Communion, and the cover with the bald man on the cover. And she saw the bald man, and it looked just like, I kept a diary since I was young, and I would keep writing and drawing pictures of the being I would have experiences with. And my mother, picked up the book and looked, and then it was just like looking at my drawings. So this is when my mom started saying, hey, wait a minute, maybe she's not, and maybe this isn't just childhood fantasy. Maybe this is reality. And since then, I mean, years later, decades later, here we are, and my mom's an experiencer, and so things have progressed. So it's just been a crazy life for me. We lived in Ohio when I remember them first starting. There was one time we lived in the middle of nowhere. There was mountains, hills everywhere, and the nearest neighbor was miles away. So there wasn't anything around I remember one particular time when my dad came in all excited when he went outside after I had had an experience, and he came in and he's like calling my mom outside, and I'm looking out and they're talking about look at the yard, look at the yard, and the yard had been trampled as if a stampede of cattle had been trampled through the yard. There was cattle footprints all over the yard, and no cattle to no cattle for miles. That's just strange stuff like that. It happened a lot, as to the point where my parents finally started saying, wow, I think this is real.
Did you have a routine to try to protect you from the bald men from coming?
Actually, no. I mean, I, I had this, a stuffed animal that I wouldn't go anywhere without. He was a stuffed dog, a big stuffed dog. His name was Henry, and I went everywhere with him. And I remember the one time that I tried to resist them coming. They threatened me to hurt Henry, and if I didn't put him under the bed the next day, that they would hurt me. So what I did was I resisted this, and the next time they came, the next day they came, he wasn't under the bed. Come on, cat. Um, they hurt me. They sent some kind of a painful vibrational shock kind of thing going through me. So they told me again, if we come back and Henry's not under the bed, we're going to do something even worse. So that night I decided to put Henry under the bed. And I had no experience that I remembered. And I woke up and I was kind of excited that I didn't have anything happen. And I got up to get ready for school, and I didn't go anywhere without Henry. And I went to get him from under the bed, and he wasn't there. So my stuffed animal was abducted instead of me. I was hysterical. I ran around, trying to find him, blaming my brother for stealing him, and nobody knew where Henry was, and I had to go to school for the longest, most miserable day of my life when I was a little kid without my Henry. And when I got home, Henry was sitting right on my bed, so they brought at least. So
Wow.
after I mean, fighting them is not easy, especially when you're a little child. Not recommended in any way. But as I got older, I did. I've had some major experiences, major attacks, and I've started fighting back. And I've actually learned, and I've got guides, non-human guides that will defend me and protect me when needed, which is nice. Because for a while there, I was getting really, really attacked a lot by the negative entities that really just kind of took over my life for a while there. And
Well, we could get into that and see if Matt went through something similar. So
okay.
we could compare notes. So Matt, at what age did your stuff start? Did you go through something similar?
Oh, a lot of the stuff she said rang true. I had a lot of similar experience. Of course, everybody's independent experience is their own. But yeah, it started one of my very first memories. Small kid, probably 3. I know at the time my sister had just been born, so I would have been about 3 years old, sitting in bed, not sleeping. I was actually sitting in bed playing with little matchbox cars. Put your knees up and you make a little ramp with your feet on with the sheet, and the car goes rolling back and forth, having fun, as a typical 3-year-old would do. And I remember this, best way to describe it is a turquoise bluish light coming in from the window near where my bed was. I had the door and then the wall and then light coming into the windows. And I got this like weird, eerie sensation that this is not right. Something about this is not right. In the room, the best way I can describe it is had a negative air pressure. Yeah, I felt a definite barometric change within the room. So much to the point that my closet door wound up popping open, you know, that kind of immediate negative air pressure where in the room and the door, because the door wasn't, you know, completely shut, but it was enough to make it open. And at that point, 3 years old, 4 years old, what are you gonna do? Hop under the covers, cover your head up, you know. It's like you don't know what else to do. You know, you're a kid. This is not part of what you're used to. The room got, like I said, filled with that light. I could see through the sheet, you know, shadows moving around in the room. That's when I really started to get, you know, nervous, because that's something in the room with me. And I didn't hear the bedroom door open and anybody come in. So how the hell did, you know, the people get in the room? They ain't come out of the closet. So it's like, okay, what the heck? And next thing I know, I've got what feels like 2 feet walking on either side of my body, walking up past my chest, you know, 1 foot on either side, slowly walking up. And I can see a dark figure through the sheets of the room filled with light. And the last thing I consciously remember is his hand hitting me in the face and just pulling the covers back off, at which point my whole body was locked out solid, could not move. The word scared stiff doesn't even come close. You know, I tried to scream, couldn't scream. The only thing, like when Debbie said this, is like, I know exactly what she's talking about. The only thing you can move is your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You can't make any vocalizations. You can't. I mean, my body was stiffened out beyond stiff, and it was like she said, a vibrating type of paralyzation. And the last thing I remember is this thing peeling the sheet off, and I'm nose to nose. Well, what it has of a nose. This thing in lights up. And next thing is waking up in the morning by my mother, you know, get up, time for breakfast. So
So do you remember the face?
Oh yeah, I
Go
do
into
now.
details?
Yeah, there's a drawing done by a woman. The skin is mottled. It has, best way to describe it is like elephant skin, but it's semi-translucent, and they're not gray. There is gray tones to it, but there's little black flecks and pinks and other salmon and other various forms of color in there. I can see why people would call them gray, because in a dark and a distant or whatever, they do take on that gray tone. But up close, they're more. That's what you ever see a rainbow trout?
Yep.
Yeah, that kind of yeah.
Yeah.
But with an elephant form of skin.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So the eyes would be wraparound eyes, you know, normal teardrop eyes.
Yeah, yeah. The nose was what was interesting to me, because, like I said, I am nose to nose with it, and I wish I could find that woman's drawing, or the drawing I gave our mutual friend that we don't speak to anymore. That the nostrils flared sideways, and there was a thing, the way they breathed, that it came in and out. So it looked like it could seal its nose off by, it gave me the impression of aquatic.
Yeah.
In a sense, it'd be able to close its nose,
whether it be like, or is that what you're talking about? Like gills, or is it more
no. You
The
know
way
how a seal can close up its nose before it dies?
I just said that.
Yeah,
Yep. Okay.
yeah, something like that.
Wow. So yeah, what's with the age of 3 years old? You know, that seems to be an age that's repetitive throughout the whole experiencer thing.
Well, it could happen before that. It's just that your memories
Memories.
are only really ingrained, forming engrams at that particular
Yeah, that's what
point.
I thought, because my brother, I'm 4 years older than him. So like I'm the eldest. So when I say that my memories go back as far as 3, because I doubt that at the age of 2 you'd have enough brain power to to recall things as vivid. But
Yeah.
again, I went through the same thing, the same fears, and but my routine was that when I knew they were there, I was so afraid that I had to tuck my belly against the wall, and I couldn't move because I was too afraid, because I knew they were looking at, behind me, and they were looking at me. And I was afraid that maybe by being against the wall I'd be protected. At least
At least from one side.
from one side. I didn't care about my back, but my belly, I had to protect that. So I tell my mom, there's people in my room at night. I don't remember seeing them. It could be blocked, but that would be like repetitive. And even before my mom died, she came back to me and said, "Remember that you used to tell me that there were people at room and in the bedroom and stuff." So my jaw dropped, because I totally forgot, which was good. But yeah, okay. So that was cool. Debbie, do you want to go into the the experiences that came after that? Do you have anything going on in your teens?
Um. Let's see. Let me think of the timeline. After, let's see, we moved from Ohio to Bridgewater, Massachusetts, when I was 9, and we moved there after a strange experience where my father actually had an experience. I remember going. It was Sunday. It was a Sunday, because Sunday was French toast day. My dad would make French toast every Sunday. And that was my favorite food. And I remember getting up and getting excited, and it would be the same routine. Come on, cats. These cats are driving me nuts. Sorry. It'd be the same routine. I would get up and run out to the living room, and my dad would be there reading his newspaper. And I would, jump on the couch, say, "Daddy, it's French toast time," and he would get up all excited, and that's how the day would begin on Sundays. Well, this particular Sunday, I ran in, got up. It was Sunday. You can get me my drink, please, over there. And I got up and I ran out to the living room, and I jumped, and he had his newspaper in front of his face. And I jumped on the couch saying, "Daddy, Daddy, it's time for French toast," and started talking, and he's got the newspaper in front of his face, and he's got his legs crossed, and he wasn't responding to the point. He was like a statue. Nothing moved, not even his eyes, nothing. He was just frozen in time. And I couldn't understand what was going on. I'd flick the paper, hello. I'd move my hands in front of his face. There was no getting him to wake up, shaking, nothing. And so I was really confused and kind of like, why is he ignoring me? What's going on? Did I do something? I don't know what's going on. And so I sat on the floor in the living room in front of him, and I started playing with some toys, and I'm guessing maybe I don't know how long it was, but it was longer than 20 minutes. It could have been 20 minutes, could have been an hour. There I was sitting there playing with my toys, and once in a while I'd look up and see if anything's changed, and now he just sat there like a statue. And out of nowhere, it kind of made me jump, because all of a sudden it was like I just walked in the room and said, "Daddy, Daddy, I want French toast." Get up, because he got up. "Oh, okay, it's time for French toast." Like that little, that I just came in, and he didn't miss anything, and nothing, everything was normal. So he just snapped out of it. "Okay, French toast," and this and that. And the next week, uh, a week later, uh, there was a moving truck in the yard when we got home from school, my sister and I, and it we was suddenly just uprooted, kind of like out of nowhere, and shuffled off to Bridgewater, Massachusetts. Um, I told my mom just recently. I talked to her about this, and I told her what happened, and she's like, "Oh my gosh!" She's like, "I remember that day." She's like, uh, "That day, I got up and he was at the stove cooking French toast, and when I went over there and started talking to him, he said." We're moving to Massachusetts because we have no choice. God told me to do this. And next thing you know, we're in Massachusetts, Bridgewater, Massachusetts, out of all places.
Yeah.
So she didn't, she forgot about that. It rustled her memory when I was talking about it. She was like, oh my God, I remember that day because just didn't know what was going on. All of a sudden, we're uprooted and moving, and uh, she remembered that that's what he said about a week before when I told her about the experience that, when he was sitting on the couch, just like a statue. That's when she filled me in with that. And that was just recently, maybe a year ago when I found that out.
Really? Wow,
And
that's crazy. There you've been, your family's been, um, I guess, manipulated really to get to because you fell into the Bridgewater Triangle. Like,
right smack dab in the Bridgewater Triangle, they just get, that's where, the life started getting really, really dark for a long time. Actually, it was dark until I moved to Maine and got out of the Bridgewater Triangle, got out of Massachusetts, where I started to totally transform and had become from this dark witch, pretty much, which I was, this dark, evil Satanist witch that ran around the Freetown Forest a little too much, if you know what I mean, into somebody that I didn't even, ever imagine I would turn into. I'm of the light now, and I've had a total spiritual awakening that transformed my life completely. So, and wow, what an awakening it's been.
now, were you aware if they were doing anything to your body when you were being taken?
Yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. When I was little, especially, I have some horrible memories of getting shots and just painful uh, um, situations that they would put me in, and also they would torment me with like when they're doing these painful things, they would make me see like a snake biting me or something, or me getting actually hit by trucks and just horrible things. Like they were just trying to traumatize me as much as they could with that. And it was uh, for, I think I was about 5 when I started remembering. I have had experiences every month. I would wake up in the front yard in the middle of the night, standing by the driveway. And this would happen once monthly. And I would be standing by the driveway where this truck would pull up. It looks like kind of like a UPS truck, but army colored, the army green. And it would pull up in my driveway. And these, I don't know, men, whatever they were, they looked like men, dressed up in military uniform, would come out of the truck, and when I would try to run, I would realize that I couldn't. I was a paralysis. I couldn't run. It's like when you have a dream, you're trying to run and you can't. It was kind of like the same thing. But they would come up and they would take me into the truck, where I don't know if it would continue in the truck or if they would bring me somewhere else. But there would be a very, very painful shot given to me in my arm once a month. And they told me that they told me if I didn't get this shot once a month, that I would stop dreaming, and I had to have it. So since then, I have had this phobia and terror of any truck that looks like that. The color green, the army green. I just at one point we went to my parents. I think it was on the way to Ohio, moving to Ohio, where we stopped at a hotel, and we walked into the room, and the room was painted army green, and I totally had a meltdown. And this is at 9 years old, and I had no idea why. This is my parents couldn't stay there. I just refused to stay in that room. So they actually had to, pack up and leave the hotel because I couldn't sleep in a room painted that color. It was awful.
Wow. That's traumatizing, really.
Yeah, it's been very traumatizing. The PTSD is, rampant
Yeah.
for many reasons. So it's not easy being somebody like us,
Yeah. Matt, let me see. Unmute. Come on, unmute.
There, better.
Okay. So let's get into the your experiences that happened, like during the teens. Did you have anything major happening going on?
I had several encounters growing up when my adolescence, teen years. Yeah, I would be regularly visited. Same kind of foreboding feeling, light, and these things would come and go. And if you want just conscious recollection, never mind what I went through actual hypnotic regressions to recover, but I'm talking just from conscious memory, various incidents where I was brought together with various other people. And this is how things happen with, what we'll get into in the future. And there was one particular event that I recalled. They put me in a particular type of room. Best way I can describe the room is ovalish, roundish shaped domed roof, but in a center walkway, but on either side were various heights of gray boxes, just boxes starting like lower in the middle where you're walking through, and then they would it gave me the impression of an amphitheater, if you understand what I'm talking about. But with just these gray boxes that were all stuck together. I got introduced into the room on one side, and this girl got introduced on the doorway on the other side, and we followed the pathway to the middle, and we're just standing there looking up the inclines of boxes, and we're like, typical teenage kids do. They start talking, what do you know what's going on? Who are you? Who am I? Then it got to be, typical teenage kid. You put a teenage boy with a teenage girl. Started, macking on her. And, started talking about school and, what music we both liked, what movies we had just seen and things like that. And I started playing with her, the outfit that she had on, because they put the same thing on me. And it's a weird type of outfit, the way, they had us put it on, because you could take the fabric, pull it apart, let it go, and it would just seal right back up. So I was, we were talking about what they made us wear. And of course I start peeling on some of her outfit, peeling here, peeling there, and peeling closer to areas where I shouldn't be at that time, if you know what I mean. But we were like talking about how this was all weird and what is this all about? And neither of us knew. So next thing you know, doors open on either side. She has to go back in her doorway. I go back over to the direction I came from. Fast forward about 7-8 years, I'm sitting in a planetarium, a domed round room planetarium, and then it was a lecture by Stanton Friedman on April Fool's Day. And I look across, and there she is, the same girl. And I'm like, holy shit. And she noticed me. And we started talking, and how weird that, you know, because we both understood, you know, what we were dealing with. And that's why we're there at, you know, Stanton Friedman's lecture. Well, one thing leads to another. We actually wound up getting married and things like that. And human things wound up causing a divorce. But and then later on, in my 20s, just after that divorce, I'm working as a sound engineer at a biker bar. Band's playing, and I look, and these two girls come in who I had another encounter with a few years before that, when I had first, you know, met what was now my ex-wife. Because I meet her, and then my ex-wife and I started having all these kind of crazy experiences, running into people. You know, they'd take us both, and she'd be brought to one group of people, and I'd be brought with another group of people. Well, I wound up meeting people in the other group.
Imagine that.
And that wound up being Audrey and Debbie.
So were you aware where you were when, you know, when you're in that domed room?
Yes.
So you knew you were on a craft, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Or somewhere not where I would normally be. Yeah.
So you were there any type of aliens on that ship?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Who do you think brought me through the door?
Okay.
Who do you think brought her through the door?
Okay. So you were wearing those airtight suits that, you know, you normally see Greys have on, you know?
It wasn't really airtight.
No?
That's the part that's funky. It wasn't parts of it were, but parts of it weren't.
Okay.
Best way to describe it is a liquid suit that was really, really, really strange, you know, material.
So were there only Greys on the ship, or did you see other types of beings?
I did see other types in various other experiences. I've seen what definitely would be a what people call a mantoid type of being. I didn't have any personal interaction with it. I just in the process of going from one location to another location. This thing's in another room. This one was a relatively tall thing, well, compared to me at a teenage year, you know. But this thing had to be over 6 feet, because I'm 5'9". I was about 5'9" then, so, and it was taller than me, and it traveled from my left to my right, going by with a couple of others. And after it went by, I was ushered through to the next archway into the next thing that I was going into. There were other times where I've been brought around and I've seen what would easily pass for a human sitting at a console doing work. But as I passed by him, there were, you know, I could tell this guy is not human, but he looks close enough to be, you know, if you dress him up in the appropriate clothing, human clothing, and put him in a crowd, as long as he didn't, you know, bring attention to himself, he could easily walk by.
Wow. Were you aware anything that they did any sort of medical examination on you?
Oh, every time.
Can you go into details with that, if it's okay?
Do you want details with that?
Well, what, you know, we hear a lot of the you know, the experiences that females go through, but again,
Males go through the same.
The same, okay. Which
is recovering genetic material. Let's put it that way. In many forms.
And
blood, saliva, you know, if it's a fluid, they collect it.
Yeah.
That way.
Now, would they put you under, make you fall asleep?
Not always. No.
Not
Immobilize you, not necessarily under.
Okay. Wow. Debbie, can you explain into details, you know, the day that you got abducted and when you met Matt and after that?
Yeah, well, I did. It didn't really. I mean, I remember. I don't remember the day or when any particular, but I do remember meeting Matt on the craft because I think he was. I mean, at least the memorable one. He was the only person that I remember ever meeting on the craft. So it was a memorable experience. I remember being brought into a room, kind of like it seemed like a waiting room or something. Where these like plain benches or whatever they were, sat down with. I know my sister was there. I don't remember if we were brought in at the same time or different times, but I do remember uh, being there, and it was myself. My sister and Matthew, who turned out to be Matthew, a strange guy that we didn't know. It was an awkward, silence for a few, I think, and then we started, just being like, so what's up? What's going on? I mean, hi, what is up with this? And does anybody have a clue? I mean, what as to what's going on? And it was just a very awkward, but meant to. I think they put us in this room, and they wanted us to remember that moment when we met. Um,
Yeah,
so
it's
with me,
staged.
yeah, with me, I'm not very good at remembering faces or names much. So the fact that when we walked into that biker bar years later, and I was able to recognize him, tells you that they must have seared it into my head because I don't remember faces and names very well. So I remember when we came in, I saw him. I noticed first the sound guy, and I'm just staring at him. I'm like, I know that guy, and I'm like, Audrey, we know that guy. And she's like, because I didn't want to say anything to her about where we knew him from, just to see if she recognized him like I did. And I didn't want to seem crazy, but yeah, she started at first. She was kind of ignoring me because she was talking to somebody, but I was just like, look, we know this guy. I'm like, do you recognize him? And she started looking at Matt, and she's like, "Oh my God, is that? I think we met him, like, during one of our experiences, our abductions. I think we called them back then." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's. I thought so." I'm like, I really, you know, just wanted to hear what you thought. I think that's him. And we were hesitant at first to go up and start talking to him, but we finally did. And it was funny because that night, um, I was dating the owner of the biker club at the time, and I had gotten my brother Mike. He's six years older than I am. We got him a gig with his band to play at this biker bar, and as my sister and I go to introduce ourselves to Matt, and to see if what he said, and so we wouldn't seem crazy. um it's not easy to go up to somebody and say, do you remember me? We met on the spaceship. You don't want to say that to just your average Joe. And we, at that time, we really didn't know anybody else like us. We've always had each other, but we've never really met anybody else that has had experiences. So it was a very awkward meeting, but it was when we started talking, and I don't know what brought it up, but we all recognized each other and just started spouting off stuff uh, like we were like long lost friends. And while we're doing this, and my brother's band is playing in the background, and he was playing a song that he wrote called "My UFO is Up on Blocks."
Yep.
So while we were having this conversation with somebody that we met on a craft, like a decade before we met him in person, my brother's band was playing My UFO Was Up on Blocks. I mean, you can't make this shit up. It's like it's scripted before we even acted out. It was an amazing meeting. And since then, I mean, it's been years, and it was like instant family. And I remember being out on the back porch at this club, staring up at the sky with him, and Matt and I made an oath that we were never to date each other because that's what the ETs wanted. Yeah, Yannick, for the last question, at that time, it was like, I don't remember any really major things. We were very busy dancing with darkness at the time, but my brother, we were involved in some pretty heavy stuff, and I remember we had to move pretty much into protective custody for a while out of the state. We were put in with actually a group of white witches, a coven of white witches to stay with. We were working with Blood and Detective Alan Alves, aka Cult Cop, where we were put in New Hampshire, yeah, for a while. And my brother, my mom called and told me that my brother Mike had approached her that day and asked, this is my mom, my brother's asking my mother, you remember those bald men that Debbie used to see? And she was like, yeah. Well, I met one last night. He said, yeah, I woke up elevated above my bed, and I looked down, and there's this little bald man standing there wanting to know where I was. So the experiences that I remember when I was in the darkness, I don't really remember. It was, I think I ran from it for a while, and when I did start really zoning in on it again, I was in Rhode Island. I lived in Rhode Island when, let's see, 98. I just had my second son. So yeah, it was 98. Around that time, it might have been 97 because I think it was before. But that's when I started. I saw something on TV about, I think it was John Mack, something about John Mack, and it got my attention. And when I started focusing on the ET subject again, is when I start remembering, and I start having really memorable contact experiences. That's where I woke up, actually got the paralysis. And this is, I did know Matt at the time because I remember when I met you, Matt, we were in touch on the phone and stuff. And I remember I told you one day that I felt like I was going to have an experience. And if your phone rings, pick it up because I'm going to try to call you. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
I'm going to try to fight it. I'm going to grab the phone. I'm going to keep it right here. And I'm going to just dial you. You're on redial. And that night, I did end up having the experience, and I did pick up the phone and was able to, dial Matt, but then the phone went dead. And when the paralysis, when they hit you with the paralysis, with the vibration and the sounds and your body, you can't move. When that started, I started to fight it. And I really, really just gave it all I could to fight this. And I actually got myself out of this paralysis. And when I did, I sat up and I looked around the room and I noticed a bureau, someone ducking behind my bureau. So I said, look, I need there to come out and show yourself. What do you want? What do you want? That's one of the intimate and memorable experiences I've had with what people call the typical grays occurred, because this being realized that I was completely aware, and I was completely out of the paralysis thing they do to you. And I was, she had to confront me. I say she because when she stepped out, it was a typical short, black, cloaked being, but it gave off like the energy. You could feel it was she was female. I can't explain it. They look the same pretty much. When it comes down to, the facial features, you can't tell them the difference, but you can feel whether male or feminine or masculine. And this one was a feminine feeling. So I asked, I was like, look, what do you want? Why do you keep doing this? Why do you guys do this? And I remember hearing something like I don't really have a choice, and then something else. I don't remember exactly what she said, but I remember hearing, but I don't like women. And I was like, well, you think I like you very much? I mean, look at what you have done to me my entire life. And this is a conversation. At that point, I realized that I wasn't talking to this being. I was communicating with this being, but my mouth, I was like, wow, I'm not talking. I'm talking to this being in my head. And that's what I realized. Wow. And this being, I could feel the fear. She was nervous. And I was like, well, I'm like, do me a favor. I'm like, I probably have no choice in this. And I know what happens when I try to fight you guys. I'm like, well, can you at least let me get my shoes on, before you, did escort me to wherever. And, I got the sense of the easiness, the lighter feeling around, like the air in the room just got lighter. And I don't know, I think that it made her feel more comfortable. And this is when she walked over and she sat on my bed right next to me, and she takes her cape, the hood of her cape off. And that's when I got to stare this little beautiful being in the face, for the first time, without the cloak, hooded, kind of don't look at me hiding, where I got to just stare into this being's eyes and watch the skin, this beautiful skin, it was like just swirling, and it was like a galaxy in her own face. It was just beautiful. And the material of the cloak she had on, it looked black, but this cloak had that swirly feel. I think the cloak is meant for like camouflage, because it seemed to take on forms like the colors and the forms around that were in the room. And she reached out her little hand, the hand, I remember 2 fingers and a thumb. I don't know if she had another finger in there somewhere, but that's what I remember. And she held my hand. She reached out and she grabbed my hand. And here I am holding the hand of this beautiful non-human being, and having this intimate connection with this being, and feeling the cold clamminess of this skin. I'm like, this is not a dream. This is, I am experiencing everything, visual, touch, everything. And it was a beautiful experience we started having. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this unembodied voice, after we just really starting to get to know each other, screamed, enough. And then she jumped and she kind of got up to bed, and she's like, all right. And she started getting nervous and rushing around trying to get me ready to go. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I was like, I'm going to put my shoes on. I'm like, and I'm going to give you a pair of my kids, and I want you to put shoes on too when we go out. And if you do that, then I'll gladly, go with you. And that's what she did. She took my son's shoes and she stuffed them on her little feet, and I put mine on. And I woke up the next day. It was one of the most vivid, most memorable experiences I've had. And the first thing I did was grab that phone and say, I called you, Matt. Do you remember me calling? So, yeah, I'm glad that the phone at least rang on his end, and he heard it, and
that's all it did was ring.
yeah,
There was nothing on the other end.
Yep.
Did you
I
pick
was
it up?
up the
Yeah.
phone and hit
3
the.
o'clock in the morning.
Damn.
Yep.
Because I called her back, 6 o'clock in the morning? Or you called me back at 6
Yeah.
again.
I
I
got
was
brought.
like, yeah, you called, and then there was nobody there, so I went back to sleep.
Yeah, because I remember specifically picking that phone up and dialing, and then just this power surge or something going through, and the phone just died.
So was she like a hybrid, maybe one of your hybrid daughters, perhaps, or?
Well, I don't think no, I don't think she was a relative of mine, because she really didn't like me at first. They're just I could feel, I feel telepathy. People think telepathy is hearing voices. No, it's not just hearing voices. It's hearing
The
them.
whole experience. It's everything, not just the thought, the words, the feelings.
It's feeling their energies. It's feeling what they're feeling. It's becoming like part of how they feel. So when she first came in, it was a fearful feeling, and that's what got me like, like, well, why, so, and after the thing that I said that lightened her up, it was like taking a weight off of her, because I felt it. I felt the change, a total different transformation of her feeling, which was for good. But it's totally a change for the better, and to this day, I still have I have regained and have a constant channel and communication with it. I know she's around because she'll let me know by, I feel it now. She's tugging at my toe. It's my little toe on my right foot that she will pull when she wants to talk to me. She's doing it right now. These are multidimensional beings. People don't realize the extent that these ETs are. They are, when you have a connection like I do with some of them, this is the 24-hour connection that is there, and they're able to breach the regular dimensions, or whatever, this 3D plane of pain, as I call it, that we live. They are able to breach through that, and I'm sitting here now. I can feel her there, when she can be here, and so it's hard to explain. A multi-dimensional being. I've learned how. They've been teaching me for years how to communicate and to be who I am. I was told I was a Pleiadian really hybrid, and that they're gonna start activating all sorts of my gifts. Yeah, gifts that they're gonna start waking up my DNA or whatever, and they have, because I have become to the point where I can be sitting here and speaking with you guys, and I can be also out of my body communicating with her at the same time. This happens a lot. I learned to practice this skill behind the wheel, driving. As I'm driving, I'm there, but I started really just being able to be in multiple dimensions at once. It's hard to explain, but it's a totally phenomenal experience. I've been through literally hell in that, but I don't know with 100% what my purpose is here, because they don't tell you what it is. See, we're on this 3D realm, the 3D plane of pain, and it's a free will zone. So what they do is they can give you a dice, and they like doing riddles and playing things like, if you see the same repetitive number, or you're thinking of somebody and they just show up at the door. These are all like little synchronicities that if you if you watch and you catch on, and then you realize that there's beings like, you know, and somebody wants to call them angels pushing you in the right direction, and then there's the devils pushing you in the wrong direction, and they cannot tell you what to do, but they can give you opinions and riddles and throw things at you and try to, you know, their best to let you know that they're trying to, they're there for you, but they cannot make up your mind for you, and they cannot tell you exactly. They'll tell you, you'll learn when it's time. So when I try to ask, you know, what am I here for? What's my purpose? You know, they cannot tell me that. They know, but if they tell me that's going to influence my free will, you know, that's going to affect the way I choose things, and that's a frustrating part of it. But as I go into my awakening, I realize more on why they do this, because it will strongly influence someone if they say, "Hey, you know, go outside and go to the store right now," you know, and you listen to them. This is not your decision. This is their decision. You know what I mean? So it's hard to explain.
So Matt, when did you start to come out regarding all of your experiences? Did anything bad ever happen to you?
Did anything bad ever happen to me?
Yeah, well, let's say from my point of view, when I was dating my British experiencer, we my phone was tapped. You know, there's a lot of you know, so that's why I think bad things. I don't want to mention any particular institution, but did you go through anything bad? Let's say.
Well, let me put it this way. Back in when I had met my ex-wife, the experience, you know, the one I met on board craft, that's when her and I both started looking into the subject very seriously. And as a scientist, I offered, you know, my services to other researchers and things like that. And I would do analysis on physical materials for a number of different researchers in exchange for information. Okay. And I got involved with Budd Hopkins, John Mack, Dave Jacobs, anybody back in the early days, late 80s, early 90s, when I was really starting to look into this stuff. And I started doing some testing for Budd Hopkins and did some testing on crop circles. And I had my house broken into. I lived on the 3rd floor. They stole my research and then tried to burn my house down. Okay. 2 weeks after that, I was being picked up. I would carpool with some people from, you know, going into work. While waiting for, you know, the ride to show up, this Ford LTD Crown Vic with G12 plates, which is government plates of a particular level, pulls up to me, and two what I'll describe as gorillas, if you know what I mean. You know, couple of
Hired goons.
Yeah, hired goons, basically. A couple of gorillas, and they weren't dressed in black. One was wearing like a tawny suit. The other was like a blue suit. Said basically to me, Mr. Moniz, you may wish to discontinue the current avenue of research you are pursuing. Just like that. And I'm like, I'm in my early 20s. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Guy pulls out a Desert Eagle 5.0 and points it at me. It's like, we'll be seeing you. And then it drives off. So, yeah, I have had a few rough encounters here.
Wow.
I've also had a couple of rough encounters with them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like that experience?
Yeah, why not? I'm sure that, you know, those listening in, they're really into this. At least I am. So why not get into it?
Well, the difference between me back then and me now is I'm armed to the teeth. Come on back if you like.
Yeah, I know your love of guns.
But the other experience that I had on board craft was, and this is verified by my ex, I had to come down to my parents' house to help them do something. And my ex was still back at our house in Fall River. And my parents lived about 20 minutes away. So I figured, okay, I'll just hang out there for the night and wake up in the morning and do some stuff, whatever they needed me to finish doing. That night, they picked up both her and I, and we both consciously remember this. And unlike Debbie, I don't have good experiences. I'll have neutral experiences or things go sideways. And I generally, if they screw up, I will create havoc. Always have, not always will. Well, they had her, they were walking her past where they had me stuffed in, best way to describe it is in a hallway, there's a little alcove, the size of a phone booth or whatever off the hallway. It's not really a room, more like a closet or, just the best way to describe it is, like I said, a little phone booth thing off the side of the main hallway. One of the little guys stuffed me in the hole and then walked away. Got to shut me off. We got to immobilize me as they walked my wife by, and I'm like, so I just stood there and watched them do it, and I realized I'm mobile. They all went that way. So I peek out from the, and I watch them go to the end of the hallway and then take a right. And I'm like, okay. I come out. I come up behind the intersection. I watch right. I see where they're going off around in the corner. So it was like, there was two in front of my ex and one behind her, walking behind her. So I'm like, okay. I come running up from behind, grab the one that's behind her right by the neck, squeeze, bring him back with such force and yank back. I snapped its neck, killed it, dead right.
Wonder they don't like you.
Yeah, well, at that point, that's when I charged forward, pushed my ex to the side, using the dead body in my hand, proceeded to beat down the other two. Grabbed the ex
Another guy. Yeah.
and started running down the hallway with her, still holding
Still hitting the guy with the other guy.
the dead ragdoll thing in my hands. And we get to the end of the hallway, and it turns out to be a dead end. At which point I turned around, and all I remember is a mad pack of bees sound. It sounded like a really angry, mad pack of bees. Next thing I recall after that is waking up at where my parents were, and I immediately looked to my hand to see if I still had it, but obviously nothing there. And then I went into the bathroom because I felt like I had been run over by a Mack truck. I go into the bathroom, I realize I'm bleeding from my eyes, my mouth, my nose, my ears. If there was an orifice for blood to come out, it was coming out. From what I am able to put together, they spaced me for a little bit as I
Oh no.
don't you do that no more. But I have been known to run around. That prior to that, I had gotten out, and I didn't get a hold of anything, but I've gotten a hold of objects and wreck stuff.
Well, that's
So now,
strange, though. They're telepathic. They should have at least been aware that you were mobile, which is strange. Well, I guess not.
They
No,
wanted to see what he'd do.
they're not perfect. They do fuck up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so Debbie, did you have any experiences regarding black copters or the bad
Oh yeah,
people?
that comes with the territory. Mine aren't as memorable as my sister's. When She's actually got some one of the books. I don't remember one that Kathleen Denise worked on. Kathleen Martin and Denise Stoner. Hold on, I got sleep problems again. Ugh. And I guess she was at home, and we live in Maine. There's no reason for these big black militarized helicopters to be, you know, buzzing around, but never mind hovering over her house for at least a half hour, maybe 45 minutes, like very low, like you could throw something, you could throw a rock at him and hit him kind of low. She was got a fix, but my experiences, I mean, I've got a couple pictures, but I did have one really memorable one. Now that I think about it, it was right during the time that my sister had gotten the pictures of the black helicopter. Um, I remember I was going to night school at the time for medical assisting, and it was about 11 o'clock at night, and I got home. Now that I think about it, maybe the helicopter wasn't, you know, your average Joe helicopter, because I pulled into my driveway, which means I had to go, you know, past my house and then pull in, because my driveway's, you know, my house is on the right with the road, and then you have to pass my house to get to my driveway from where I was coming. So when I parked and got out, I was walking to the door, and that's when a helicopter, black helicopter, it's like it was caught in my backyard, so because it's like just flew over my house. It's so close that you could feel it, you know, just the wind and the air from it. It just popped out of nowhere, because I just pulled in. I didn't see any kind of aircraft or anything on the ground, but then again, I wasn't looking, and it was nighttime. So where they parked there, where did they come from? You know what I mean? They just came. It scared the crap out of me. They just came out of nowhere and just buzzed my house to the point where I could feel the breeze coming down and hear the blades. It was a terrifying experience. It was definitely meant by whoever is driving these things to intimidate. The best black helicopter experience that I can remember is we all know him. I'm not going to mention his name because he's not here to defend himself. But he was my sister's roommate for a while, and part of the family. Very good part of it. And a visitor, and he was taking a shower one day, and above my sister's shower, there is a skylight. And he said he was taking a shower, and he heard what sounded like a helicopter, and he looked up, and they were actually watching him taking a shower through the skylight. So I mean, the way he explained it, it was hilarious. It was hilarious. But yeah, they are definitely there. I get a lot of the surveillance type helicopters. Uh, it seems like after an experience, a very memorable experience that I have, there will be a lot of, you know, activity with the surveillance kind of helicopters around. Um, so yeah, helicopters and me, I forgot all about that buzzing until he said something. It's weird how just things just kind of disappear from your mind until something comes up, you know?
So let's get into the creation of Starborn support. When did that happen, Debbie?
In 2006. Wasn't that after Joe Nyman came and hypnotized Audrey for the first time? I think it was after that, right after that. So
Yeah, 2006.
yeah. It was 2006, and I wasn't there when. Why don't you tell what happened when you? I don't know much because I wasn't there about Joe, and you were there when Audrey was hypnotized by Joe, right?
Correct. Yes, I
So
was.
tell what happened with that experience, and then I'll take off from there because I was not there during that.
All right, I'll give you generalizations. I don't want to give specific things because that's Audrey's experience, and I don't want to be sharing other people's stuff without their permission.
There was an experience with crows, right, out the window.
Yeah, there was a collection of crows that kept coming by during the entire hypnosis session, as well as hanging out afterwards. The point of hanging out on the railing while she was in the middle of the session, because I'm sitting in a chair watching her on the couch being regressed and Joe beside her, and as I'm looking out, there's a crow looking back watching the whole thing happen, walking up and down on the railing, and then a bunch of them hanging out in the tree. Audrey was relating a number of experiences and things like that. It got very personal in a lot of cases, what she was talking about. I don't want to get into details of it, but she was having an emotional state. And when she got to a certain emotional state, they all started chattering amongst each other. Even to the point where even Joe and his wife there made note of it. Like that was kind of weird. And after that is when she had her, I'll call it epiphany, to start putting together Starborn support.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, why don't you put it together like this and do this and that and get your sister involved and just make it a one come all type of thing where we can all just get together and she can take it from there.
All right. Well, I want to just start with the crows. I learned through my past experience that these beings that we deal with, they can, I don't know if they take over the body of animals or if they actually transform into animals. But when I was having a major awakening contact with a Pleiadian being named Sepho, he's still one of my guides, but he was in the process. He told me something that I didn't believe. He said, well, who I am and what I am is what you and your religions call an angel. And I laughed at him, and I was like, you're not an angel. No, you're not. And I didn't believe in angels. I didn't believe in that crap, But he's like, all right. And this was in the morning, butt crack of dawn, kind of. And it was after a big winter snowstorm. And the conversation is going on telepathically. But I would speak out of my mouth, but I would hear him, and it was all no. Wait a minute, that was before the telepathy kicked in. This was automatic writing that I'm learning that that this being thinks he's an angel. So when he said that, he also said, "All right, go open your door, your front door. There's angels out in your yard." And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, okay, I'm gonna tell you, open the door, just, being my typical sassy, wise ass self. And when I opened the door, I was blown away and just dropped to my knees and started crying because what I saw out in the yard was, I have a picture of it on my Facebook. It was a snow angel. Like, when you get out in the snow and you make snow angels. But this snow angel was maybe 2 feet or so big, and it looked, you can see the wings and the feathers, and it looked like an angel, because it looked like a little ponytail, and their face, and both wings come up, and there's no footprints or nothing. I'm like, how did you do this? Where did this come from? And that's when he told me to look in the tree across into my neighbor's tree. And I looked in the tree, and there was a solitary single crow sitting in that tree. And I saw the bird, and he's like, "You see that crow?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Watch this." And that's when the crow flew out of the tree and actually flew right towards me to the point of going right in front of my face. And he's like, "That's how we do it." So this snow angel, they're able to manipulate, and I don't know if they take forms or if they just I know they're very good at getting inside of things, so they're probably, you know, they're taking over. They're probably just jumping into this crow. So with is murder crow, they're, you know, dealing with crows is called a murder, if you're wondering. But that's why it's so, you know, these all these crows are lined up watching Audrey's hypnotherapy session. You know, there's no accidents with that. That was actually the ETs themselves. I know because I witnessed a totally phenomenal experience, and it was just incredible. It was that was one of my major awakening moments right there. So with these abilities of them, I think they like crows. They tend to like crows to hang out. Crows are cool. So I know definitely that those were not your typical crows. That was a gang of our Star family, you know, watching the show pretty much. I totally strayed off the original.
So when when did you get the idea of creating Starborn Support? How did that happen?
Well, it was shortly after the hypnotherapy session I'm talking about, and he told me Jonah and told me that maybe I should start a support group, you know, eventually. And I was like, "Oh, I can't do that," you know. It came up, and then a few days later is when she called me all excited and wanted me to come over. So I went over there and told my she had their otherworldly being to her. She is going to be starting a support group for experiencers, and they're going to call it Starborn Support. And it, like that day, I don't remember exactly the day, but it was in 2006 when she told me that was it. We're up and going. It just kind of made itself happen with the, you know, divine assistance, obviously.
So I guess, guys, we're going to wrap it up. We're about to not see Matt anymore. It's getting pretty dark.
That and Matt wants to go eat.
Oh, yeah, it's late, yeah.
You know, we really need to do this again when I'm not so, when I'm more prepared. This, you know what happened, Yannick. They're all trying to get that stupid thing going. Matt, it was crazy watching the screen. It just kept popping up and popping up and popping up. I've got videos. I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
man.
We've had trouble with the audio and the video and getting everything installed. So
more professional. This is more like a, you know, a test run. But yeah, do what you need with it. But this, don't forget about the meeting coming up on Zoom. Hopefully I will have things up and going and more professional when we have the meeting with all of us.
Yeah, for the TV show coming up.
Yeah.
So we're gonna wrap it up. So thanks everyone for watching. I've learned more stuff today than some tidbits that I never knew about you guys. So I'm really hyped. So really enjoyed today's show, and so everyone watching, big thanks. And again, Debbie and Matt, thanks for coming on.
No
Pleasure.
problem.
And no, it's the honor's on mine. You know, this was awesome. I got chills right now, so I'm so hyped. So thanks everyone, and more experiencer interviews coming up. So take care, and I'll see you guys next time.
All right, honey. Love you guys.
Take care.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye.
Night.
Bye.